people who bumped biscuits with their teacher, at what point did your relationship go down that route, and how do you feel about it now? A couple I know met as a teacher and student at graduate school. According to her, she didn't ask him out until after the grades were in. According to him, she needed an A. But it's my dad, so he's probably kidding. Got with my English teacher after graduation in her minivan in the middle of nowhere. We had gone out for drinks, and things just took their own turn. She was in the middle of separating from her abusive husband. Not saying that makes this okay, but what happened happened. Unfortunately for me, the van got stuck in mud and we called for a tow. Ironically, the tow guy was a firefighter who worked with her husband. Things went downhill from there, but that's all that I'll say. Well, I was 17 at the time. Not sure how old she was, but I would guess early 30s. I always found her attractive, but I didn't really think much of it since I never expected anything to happen. I would assume most people wouldn't think anything is going to happen. Students were assigned a guidance counselor for academic questions, and the psychological counselor was in another spot of the school. She was the academic counselor, so occasionally I would go down there and ask whatever it was I needed to know. I'm not very organized, so I'm sure I went down there a few times a year. After a while, I would visit just to say hello because she was friendly, and I was getting attention from an attractive woman, so come on, give me a break here. Anyway, I go down there one afternoon and say hello and chat a little, and after a while she asked me how my dating life is going. Well, to be honest, I told her not very well. I'm a quiet guy, not shy but quiet, and I'm just not confident enough as a person yet to really get myself out there. So we talk a little more about dating and why I don't do it, and I go off to my class. This goes on for a while, talking to each other about mildly personal things, until one afternoon I go to visit, and she asked me what, thinking back to it, is probably the question that changed things. How come you have so much time to visit me? I would stay at least a half hour each time, so she had a point. I don't know why she didn't ask this earlier, but I didn't want to say anything because she was kind of the only friend I had. I don't think she saw it that way, but I did. And I simply said, I like visiting you, so I make time. We sat and talked for over an hour that afternoon. A few weeks go by and I'm walking home as a car pulls up nearby and she gives me a little honk and waves. But not the kind of wave like the wave you'd give to a friend or a coworker or whatever. It was a flirty wave. But, of course, at the time, I didn't consider it flirty because that was just crazy to me. Several more weeks pass, and I spot her car, waiting for me now across the street this time. I wave and start walking, but she leans her head out the window and asks if I need a lift. I say sure, why not? We begin to drive, and she says that she needs to drop some things off at her apartment, asks me if that's okay. My high school brain below the belt is having a fit, but is saying, don't be ridiculous, nothing's going to happen. This is just a fantasy, and you know reality is different, she's just giving you a lift, so shut up and just sit there. I was wrong. We get to her apartment, and she says I can wait on the couch. She comes back from her room, sits down, and starts telling me about how she hasn't been with anyone for over a year, and it's affecting her job because she can't concentrate. I say nothing, frozen in hormonal fear. She looks at me in a way that I've never seen her do, puts her hand on my leg and says, you know, out of all the students I've talked to, I'm the most comfortable with you. And this entire time, I'm just frozen. I don't know what to do, what to say, nothing. She tells me to relax, grabs my hands, and leads me to her room. And well, the rest is history. I was born in Greenland, but when I was 18, I got the chance to go to school in the States. So I had my senior year there. The English teacher had just gotten the job there as well, according to the other kids my age. But what happened was I needed help just speaking and learning English better, so she said that she'd help me out. I'd come in after school, and we'd use flashcards for me to learn English phrases. Eventually, she started asking me questions like what I thought about American girls, and if I preferred blondes, brunettes, etc. The questions slowly got more personal until she gave me her phone number, told me to call her at 8, and that she'll have plans. I was confused as heck, but when I got to her house, my other head took over the thinking, and suddenly things made a lot more sense. After graduation, I got together with my old history teacher a few times. I frequently would watch his daughter when he had to work late, and I was invited to go camping with the two of them. Let's have a drink to celebrate the beginning of summer changed quickly. I ended it very abruptly when his daughter started calling me mom. So, that kid's now probably going to have mommy issues. Reasons like this are why you don't date your students. I personally just don't think that established individuals should be dating fresh out of high school or freshly into college individuals. That just seems like a recipe for a massive disconnect in the relationship, simply because of the two vastly different places that these people are in. In grad school, I was a research assistant for a professor in her late 30s. Brilliant woman, gorgeous redhead, lots of tension. You could tell there was a mutual attraction. Our relationship gradually veered into the personal. We would get lunch, drinks, talk about personal things, just deep stuff like the purpose of life. Her husband, also a professor, was away for the week on a conference. We had a meeting to discuss a project of mine, and she rescheduled to her home. I had an idea of what might have been up, but I didn't really expect much. I arrived to a cliché. She opened the door in a robe, with nothing underneath, dropped the robe once we got inside, looked me in the eyes, and asked me if I wanted to go to bed with her. We had a physical relationship for the 2 years until I graduated. Now that I am graduated, I haven't seen her since. My career took me away, so I can't even if I wanted to. How do I feel about it now? I don't think of it that often. I do miss her occasionally as a person. She was one of the few people that I've actually considered to be a friend in my life. One of the 3 women that I've developed feelings for. After I graduated, I saw my history teacher at a bar and he bought me a drink. Took me back to his place and we got together. I snuck out the next morning and haven't heard from him since. So, how was it? It was historic. Nice. Uni professor. Saw this guy on Grindr when I lived on campus and thought he looked pretty hot. Messaged him, said he was a prof on campus, so I had to send a pic first. Found out the department he taught in, and it was mine. Sent my picture on the promise he would. He says he never realized I was bi, and he always thought I was fit. Sent his picture. Says bring a towel and meet at the office in 15 minutes. Met in his office. Went down south on him. Went up on him. And we started a great FWB relationship. I get why a professor would do this, because hormones go burr, but I can't imagine that risking your job is worth it. I got with my high school gym teacher after I graduated. I was really overweight and just not pleasant to look at in high school, in my opinion, but I had a huge crush on him. After graduation, I lost weight, looked him up on Facebook, and I said we should meet up for dinner, so we did. I told him I used to have a giant crush on him, which he didn't believe. He said I should go to his place for dinner sometime, and of course I was all for it. I get there, and he made a pizza, and we had some drinks. Then watched TV on the couch for what seemed like an eternity, just talking and joking. That led to cuddling, and next thing I know, wha-bam, my hand was on his junk. He led me to his room, and we proceeded to have one of the best bedroom experiences that I've ever had in my life. Since then, he's texted me randomly wanting more. We've exchanged pictures and videos and sometimes called each other for the big O, but never got together again. Either way, my conquest is complete. Not me, but there was a girl at my high school who was known to be in a relationship with one of the teachers. No one really knows if they were dating or just screwing, but she always hung out with a group of friends in his classroom, basically at every break that class wasn't happening. I guess at some point she started hanging out there by herself as well, and things turned into something more than just friendly. I hung out there a few times during lunch, and they would make blatant, innuendo-laden remarks to each other, touch each other in ways that were way past the line of student and teacher, and just overall make it obvious that something was going on. The administration eventually questioned the teacher about it, and he didn't come back next year. Ah, here's my thread. This happened to me over 2 years ago. I was the teacher, 25 years old, and teaching ESL while working on my master's. In walks this 20-year-old Brazilian girl who proceeded to examine me like a piece of meat all semester. I couldn't even look at her. I'd be trying to teach, scanning the room and making eye contact with my students, and here she is with her finger in her mouth, twiddling her hair. The other students probably thought, oh, absent-minded professor lost his train of thought again, as I'm over here sweating bullets trying to get my pulse rate down. At this point, I knew things were going to go down eventually. It was just a matter of time. The day the semester ended, we took the Bedtown Express for 18 straight hours. We are now happily married and expecting our first child in November. Not the ending I was expecting. Bravo. Yeah, your degree is clearly in bullshit. I'm inclined to agree with the second guy. 18 hours straight? I mean, come on. I'm a male faculty member at a community college. About 7 years ago, I had this student in my introduction class. She was inquisitive, motivated, and very attractive. I usually give my students nicknames secretly as a way to help me remember them. And I remember writing on my attendance sheet, Jasmine, because she looked just like the Disney princess. I was always very professional and careful to treat her like any other student so that she didn't feel uncomfortable, as I'm sure she did with all the male students drooling over her in class. This girl easily earned an A in the course, and we left on summer break. Fall semester starts up, and she's in my advanced level class. She sits in the front row, and again was one of the top students in the class. She was also one of the slowest students to pack up their belongings after each session, so we usually walked out together talking about various parts of the lecture. At about week 13, she approaches me and tells me that she has a question she needs to ask, and if she can meet with me for 5 minutes or so. I was always careful to only meet students in public on campus. Because of the great stigma between attractive students and professors, I was especially sure to do that with this situation. We met on a bench, and she professed that she liked me and wanted to go on a date. I refused politely, and stammered something about school policy, despite every molecule of my body chastising me for rejecting her. After the class, we became friends on Facebook, and she had recently taken some modeling photos and posted them on her profile. I ended up getting really down on myself and started wondering if I'd made a mistake in choosing my career over what seemed to be the perfect partner. Then, over the break, she emailed me thanking me for the class, and I immediately emailed back, doling out some sort of praise to her for her academic achievement. And she immediately responded saying that she left the college and enrolled in the university. We met up and had our first date not long after. Currently, we are married and have been together for almost 7 years. She is the best thing to happen to me, and I would have quit my job had I known what life would have been like with her. However, now I have both. And I'm thankful for that, because frankly, I feel like being a professor was what impressed her, because she's way out of my league. This was a situation where education definitely paid. I'm happy for this guy. The dating world is a slippery slide to get on, and when you're potentially dating a student, that makes it even worse. So the fact that she changed schools, was still interested in him, and they ended up getting together, I find personally to be kind of heartwarming. A lot of things could have gone off the rails here. I didn't get with him while I was his student. It happened when I graduated and went to college. But I did get together with my former PE teacher from middle school. He was my first real crush. And I say that because I was 12 when little girl, oh, he's so handsome, started mixing with dangerous visceral desires. And he was one of the cutest men that I've ever seen. Incredibly fit, strong features, and his smile made every girl in the class blush. He seriously could have been a model if he was taller. Anyway, of course nothing happened while I was in school, that would have been creepy, but it's not like I didn't think about it all the time. I joined our volleyball and soccer team, which he coached, in the hopes that I would impress him. And as weird as it was of me now thinking back to it, I always wore little volleyball shorts during practice. I worked harder in school because my pubescent mind thought that I could prove to him I was a mature woman if I worked hard enough. I was kind of delusional, but suddenly having a chest in the third dimension does that to a teenage girl. He was really sweet, and I spent a lot of time around him. I would sometimes spend my recesses talking to him. Never alone, I was always with my friends, who also happened to have crushes on him, and a few times he told me that he thought my name was pretty, and that his great aunt who died when he was 4 had the same name too. Now that I look back, it was kind of creepy, but at the time I thought it meant that we were destined to be together. He left the school midway through 8th grade, and by that time my crush on him had waned. I also had my first boyfriend at the time, so that took up all of my attention. Fast forward to the end of my sophomore year in college, I was back home for break and was meeting up with friends from high school. I had finally turned 21, the last one in our friend group, and decided to have drinks at the restaurant downtown right by the movie theater. It was a spot that you had to go up to the bar to order, and since I was young and excited about being able to legally drink, I was the self-designated runner. So I'm at the bar trying to get the bartender's attention, who's currently talking to some other dude, and I noticed that the guy looks kind of familiar. I could only see one side of his face, but when he turned, I immediately realized it was my old phys ed coach. He was still cute, though older and a lot shorter than I remembered. Being a little buzzed, I decided that it would be a magnificent idea to go talk to the guy who only taught me for 2.5 years. I went, "Hey coach," and grabbed his shoulder to get his attention. He didn't recognize me. But as soon as I explained who I was and where I went to school, his face lit up. At this point, I had had many mojitos and wasn't really paying attention to what he was saying. I was cliche. We spent a few minutes talking. I told him about school, how I was looking for teachers' programs. I wasn't studying to become a teacher, but my intended career path required teaching experience. And I said that I was back for the summer. He said his sister, who was significantly younger than he was, had graduated from the local community college, so he was there with his family celebrating. I told him to tell her congrats, and that I was about to go back to my table, completely forgetting about the drinks that I was supposed to order when he asked for my number. I was a little stunned, but then he said he could probably set me up at the school he was currently at. He wasn't coaching anymore, but was teaching classes now, and said he just needed some contact info. Alcohol makes me believe that I'm the world's greatest seductress, so I tried to be super flirty and said something like, "I'll give you my number for personal reasons." Yeah, the world's greatest seductress. He laughed, probably at me, and told me that I'd hear from him. We exchanged numbers and parted for the rest of the night. A week later, I texted him about possibly TAing at the school. I was in full networking mode and wasn't really thinking about my stupid flirting attempt. He texted me back a few hours later, saying we could meet up for coffee and discuss me possibly working for him during summer school. I was young and inexperienced, so I had no idea if this was unusual or not, so I agreed. We met up that weekend for coffee, and probably 10 minutes was spent talking about the job. He kept asking me questions about my personal life, what I'd been up to since middle school, things like that. After an hour and a half, he asked if I wanted to go next door and get a beer. I said yes, we went over, and the conversation over drinks is about the same. After one beer, I confessed to him that I had an embarrassingly huge crush on him in middle school. He laughed and said I was incredibly obvious, but since I was a girl, he thought it was cute, nothing more. After he said that, I don't know, but something just clicked in his face. I can't really describe it, but basically, it seemed to signal the point of no return. Within 30 minutes, we were in his house, on his bed, just going at it. It was okay, but the fact that he used to be my teacher, that I had a crush on him, and had imagined this moment so many times as a teen, just made it mind-blowingly amazing for me. I never TA'd for him, for obvious reasons, but I fulfilled my teenage dreams, and that was a reward in and of itself. So guys, that's where I'm going to cut this one off today. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm ReddList. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I will see you next time.